trade everything for what? Bread. So the question we bring to you, are we willing to trade whatever we have for the true bread of life? I continue, John chapter 6. So then the Jews murmured at him. When did the previous children of Israel murmur? In Numbers chapter 21 verse 5. They murmured and said, our soul hateth this light bread. And in this case, in John chapter 6:41, they murmured at Jesus because he said, I am the bread which came down from heaven. I am that bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. So even though that manna came from where? Heaven. That can't give everlasting life. Verse 51. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. All the world at that time came to Joseph. They were all fed. Jesus gave himself the true bread of God for everyone and anyone that comes to him. He gave his life, himself, he being the bread for the rest of for those who are hungry. Yes. Guess what? John chapter 6. Many therefore of his disciples said, this is a what? This is a what? This is hard. It's very hard for me to accept that you are the true bread. It's very hard for me to do that. And Jesus says, it is a spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profits nothing. So if you eat my flesh, if you start to be cannibals, it won't profit you anything. The words I'm speaking to you, they are spirit and they are life. And guess what? Just like many of the children of Israel, many, verse 66, of that many of the disciples went back and walked no more with him. What was the crux? What was the point that day? They couldn't accept that he was a true bread of God. And they unfortunately left. Mercy.
And they couldn't accept that they needed to walk in life after the Spirit.
Indeed. All right. Next up, Mark chapter 6. What do we understand that? What happened here? Maybe we talk about 5 loaves, fishes. Where was this? Mark 6 verse 31. And when he said unto them, come ye apart into a desert place and rest a while. And they departed into the desert place by ship privately. And when the rest of the people came unto them, he said, give you unto them to eat. And they said, how many loaves? And when they knew how much it was, 5 loaves and 2 fishes, what did Jesus do? What did Jesus do that Joshua did? Made sure that everybody there was fed with bread and no one lacked. And there was so much so that they collected up baskets afterwards of bread. Mark chapter 8. And the disciples answered, from whence can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness? And he asked them, how many loaves have ye? They said 7. So they did all eat and were filled, and they took up the broken meat that were left, 7 baskets, and 4,000 of them had eaten. So again, in the next scenario, so the first scenario is Mark chapter 6, we're in the wilderness, bread again. And in this time, they came, that was 5 loaves and 2 fishes. In a different part, at a different preaching setting, in the wilderness again, he made sure that they were fed. This time, there were 4,000, and they all were satisfied with the bread. So no matter, it's just as how Jesus satisfied the temporal needs. Eat until you're full. From a little bit, he makes sure that the spiritual needs are also fulfilled. We're going to go into a bit of deeper meanings. Are you familiar with the story of Gideon? When Gideon was going to attack the Midianites, and didn't we just hear about the Midianites?
Yes.
Who was the Midianites?
Jethro.
Okay, so hold on. A few centuries afterwards, there's a fight, and the Midianites are now attacking
Israel.
Yes, they've got them captive. So go back into your mind again, which seems, why did this happen? Don't look at about your history. The same thing when Joshua was exalted on a pinnacle, and they had him and his family in high esteem. But when the king arose in Exodus that knew not Joseph, he persecuted God's people. So Egypt, which was a blessing, and were blessed because of Joshua, became a sorry, thank you very much. They were blessed because of Joseph. They became a persecuting power because they forgot their history. Jephthah, who's a Midianite, the Midianites forgot their history and they started to persecute the Hebrews, the Israelites. Judges 7 verse 13. Behold, I dreamed the dream. So Gideon has come into this, he's sneaking around, he's coming to this tent, and as he comes into this tent, this man is relaying a dream. Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and it came into a tent, and it smote it that it fell, and overturned it at the tent lay along. So this is funny. This man has a dream, and as he is dreaming, there's this massive piece of bread, barley bread, and it just tumbled into the army, and it mashed up the tent. And they're like, what a funny dream. But the interpretation is given. And his fellow answered, God gave this man the answer, the understanding. His fellow answered and said, this is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. For into his hand hath God delivered Midian, and how much? All the hosts. What does the bread represent here? Say it louder. The bread represents, Judges 7, 13 and 14. The bread represents the sword. And it's very interesting that as the children of Israel ate the bread and exited, judgment happened upon them. The barley bread tumbled on the host in the dream, and that represented the sword. That's a funny thing. Who would ever represent a bread to be a sword? God will. God does. Okay, Malachi chapter 1. Notice this. How do you dishonor God? How do you, treat his things lightly? Notice Malachi chapter 1. Thus saith the Lord of hosts unto you, O priests, that despise my name. And you say, where have we despised thy name? Verse 7. You offer polluted bread upon mine altar. Hold on a second. God's name is dishonored, is despised when you don't offer the correct bread.